Second language acquisition, 1980s and beyond. Now, if we look at 1980s, we need to see what are the different developments in the second language acquisition that take place here in this era. But before we move on, let me remind you that the difference between learning and acquisition was the one that was proposed by Stephen Krashen. But when we over here in this lecture or during this course, when we are talking about acquisition and learning, we are using these terms interchangeably. That means they mean the same thing. And we do not make a difference between the learning of the language in natural environment or in the classrooms unless we specifically during this lecture talk about those specific moments. So by mid-1980s, second language learning had now matured into an autonomous field of inquiry. So it was not just looked upon as a groundwork that was to be done to help in the classrooms. Rather, now it was an independent field in which people were interested to know how a second language learning could take place. It was a distinctive field now with its own theories, its own methodologies, and its own orientations. And it had developed into a discipline. So if we say it has developed or had developed by the 1980s into a discipline in its own right, then this does not mean that it did not have links with other disciplines or that it cut itself off from all the other disciplines. These links were maintained, and these links were maintained with some related disciplines, while new links with other disciplines were also developed. Now, let me remind you, although for gaining knowledge and in these classroom situations or in these lectures, we divide knowledge into different segments to explain it. However, for the most part, language is like an interconnected web in which there are links between one type of knowledge to the other. Same was the case with second language acquisition or learning. It remained related to cognitive science. Of course, we would like to know how does fluency occur and what are the mental processes that facilitate or obstruct second language acquisition. It maintained its link until now also with neuropsychology. We would like to know which parts of the brain are responsible for language production, and is there a specific one module in the brain that is responsible for the language development, or is it modular? And again, we will connect with sociocultural theory or sociocultural framework offered by Vygotsky. Now, this sociocultural focus this discipline actually focuses on the basic mechanisms or the social aspects of learning and how do they affect the learning of the individual learners. There was also focus carried on from some issues that were raised in 1970s. For instance, the role of internal mechanisms was still there. The role of the first language, how does the first language help or obstruct the learning of the second language? And all those psychological variables that we talked about earlier remained very much rooted in the 1980s. And again, and also the role of the social and environmental variables was also there. People were still interested to find out what was the role of the input, what type of input should be given to the second language learners, and what effect does it have on the language learning process.